everyone.
Hello, ma'am. Good
Hi,
afternoon, ma'am.
good afternoon. How are you all doing? Cool. So, welcome to this session of critical thinking with me. My name is Pallavi Arora. Before starting the session, let me give you a brief introduction about myself. I am a postgraduate in information technology and management. I have done my graduation from Bangalore University in Bachelor of Business Management. And after completing my studies, I worked in a few multinational companies like GE Capital, IBM, and Dell. After getting married, I thought I had to change my career, so I chose education. I did my B.Ed, and I had been a teacher for English subject for quite many years. I taught in many Delhi schools, and after a few years, I thought I had to upgrade my career from teaching in schools to training. So I did a Cambridge University certification from British Council, and post that I have been a spoken English trainer. I have trained various people, adults, and students uh, in various organizations like Macmillan, British Council, and many NGOs and Delhi government schools. Right, so in my free time, I like to travel and I like to watch a lot of movies. It would be wonderful if you could also share your hobbies. I already can see your names on the screens. I would definitely like to know what all hobbies do you have. You can just use the chat box or you can unmute and speak. Yes, Shraddha. Sorry, Vishesh.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
My name is Vishesh Vishwakarma, and I am doing graduation from JCRS University, and I live in Madhya Pradesh. And my hobbies are I like to read books, especially mythology books, and I like to visit ancient monuments.
Wow. Okay, that's nice to know. So, what all scriptures do you read?
I have learned Mahabharata and Ramayana, and I'm thinking of reading Gita. It's a very beautiful book, and there are so many chapters, so it's little big, so I can't read it right now. That because we are our internship is going on. I mean, our classes are going on, so that's why.
Yeah, I think it can still be materialized. If you want to read the Bhagavad Gita, you can just pick up a habit of reading just one shloka a day, maybe, and you can just read the translation. That also helps a lot because it
Yes,
is
ma'am.
like you yourself said that it's a very, very good book, and there's a lot of lessons and morals that you can take away from reading Bhagavad Gita.
Yes,
That's really
yes,
nice to
ma'am.
know.
Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to speak about your interests?
Yeah, sure. May I?
Yes, Gaurav. Yes, please.
As you know, my name is Gaurav and I'm student of mechanical engineering doing from GCRS University. I also love to read book as my co-mate Vishesh. And I'm into music. I have been playing guitar and trying to compose a lot of music recently. I've written songs, ballads, poetries, sometimes stories, and I also follow different patterns in writing as well. I also enjoy working in technical environments where the opportunity to learn is really high and to brush up concepts is also really appreciated in such an environment. I love to interact with people who are more into music and technical side because I have not been very active into non-technical environments.
Okay.
That's all from my side.
That's really nice to know. So when you said that you play guitar, like are you learning formal guitar or do you play it just for passion?
Well, I have been playing it since 2012. So in my part time or you can say in my free time, I also teach.
Okay. Okay. That's really nice to know. Very interesting in fact. Okay, anybody else who would like to share your hobbies or else we can go ahead with the session now. Right, so critical thinking is actually a very, very huge topic. It's a very wide area which demands a lot of time, but I'll try to do justice to it as much as I can. So, let's first. I have divided this whole lecture into 5 groups. The first one being, we'll first try to understand what is thinking exactly and what are the types of thinking. Then we'll learn what is critical thinking. And after that, we will see what are the universal intellectual standards that make you a perfect critic. And there are also certain barriers to critical thinking. What are they? And lastly, we will try to understand the characteristics of a person who thinks critically. Let's first understand what is thinking. Okay, I want this session to be as interactive as possible, so I would really appreciate if you can also give inputs and make this session more interesting. So this is a very simple question that I am asking. What do you mean by thinking in general? Yes, please.
In my opinion, thinking basically means to filter out thoughts which are not very relevant to the topic or the problem statement to arrive to a viable solution.
Right, thank you so much, Gaurav. Like Henry Ford, I'll just quote a few words that Henry Ford, who used to be an industrialist and who's also the sole person to bring along amongst us Henry Ford, the vehicle, Ford Motor Company. He said once that thinking is perhaps the hardest thing ever there is. No wonder only few people engage in it. So if we see thinking, basically what is thinking? We keep asking questions. Our mind is we are actually born thinkers. We keep thinking all the time. Thinking happens when we ask questions and we also seek answers to those thoughts. Do you agree? So,
Yes, ma'am.
if we see, our mind is always full of questions like, why is the sky blue? Or is time travel possible? Why doesn't she like me? Why doesn't he like me? So as you start asking questions and you seek answers, you are in fact thinking. In other words, thinking is purposeful, organized process that we use to make sense of the world around us. I'm going to show you a picture shortly, and this is the first picture where there are 2 boys, Harry and Eddie. I'm going to show you the reasons why both of them chose engineering. Just have a look at these and try to figure out how differently they both think. I want one person to read this out to me. Would you like to volunteer or shall I nominate? Anybody could unmute and start reading this, please. Okay, I'll nominate.
I would like to come.
Thank you. Shraddha.
Yeah. My father advised me to check out my interest in engineering and the college is overnight by train from my city. All my good friends are taking up engineering. Why engineering?
Right. So this is why these are some of the reasons why Eddie preferred joining engineering. Now let's see how Harry thinks. Could you read this?
The screen is not visible for me.
Okay, I'll share it again. Just give me a moment. Now is it visible? Is it visible now, Shraddha?
Ma'am, not at my end. Maybe I have a connection issue.
Can anyone see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please read it out?
Yes, sure. So this is what Harry thinks why he chose engineering. The first is research day-to-day work of engineers and found it exciting. The second is have spoken to engineers and maths and physics. Then have checked out engineering entrance exam papers and I scored well and will get admission in a good college. Next, very interested in making gadgets and experimental models and making several working models. Then lastly, have searched job sites and find that engineering careers pay well.
Right, so this is the way how two people are thinking. The question is the same, why engineering? And you can make out how Harry is thinking and how Eddie is thinking. I'm going to explain this anyways. Would anyone of you like to tell the difference? What difference do you see?
I may.
Yes, please.
Right. So Eddie has took a very niche approach, which is from the perspective of family, his father mainly, and saw a college which was around him, which could aid his needs or the choice he was about to make. While Harry has a very deep had a very deep analysis method, so he found out why to choose engineering, not what to do in engineering, but why should he choose it, so that then he can do what he should do and what he will be doing, so that he has a very clear vision rather than Eddie, as I said.
Absolutely correct. Thank you so much. So, yes, if you see the thoughts of Harry and the reasons that he had given, it shows that he was very specific. He had done a lot of research and analysis, and he had several reasons, several logical reasons why he had chosen engineering. So, it was, not very easily or it was not very passively that he took these decisions. He actively thought about it and then he chose this line. If you see, our mind is almost like a sponge. It's a very good metaphor to compare a sponge with your mind. The sponge, if you put it in fluid, it absorbs most of the fluid. That's its characteristic. Similarly, when we are thinking passively, there's a huge lot of information that we absorb from our environment, unknowingly, unintentionally. And we also start seeing things from different perspectives. I think these are two benefits of passive thinking. However, when you're thinking passively, without any motive or without any target to achieve, you would see that your brain is actually not exerted. You are not following any process or procedure. There's no method as such. And also there is no time bound. So you can think unlimitedly for any amount of time. However, the conclusions that you come, actually there is no conclusion when you're passively thinking. Even if you come to a conclusion, the opinions that you form are not trustable. You cannot rely on such of them because you do not know which opinion to trust and which not to, since they are not based on any data. However, active thinking can be compared to panning of gold. Panning of gold is a process in which you separate the gold particles from dust particles using water as a medium. This process requires inspection. It requires examining everything very closely. It also takes time for you to understand. This is a process which needs expertise and it follows a systematic procedure. This is a very good metaphor for how you actively think. When you are thinking actively, you require data, you require analysis, you require a method, you require a repetition, and after that, when you keep practicing these things, you master it. Similar is the critical thinking process, wherein you keep practicing the same things again and again, and then one day, after a certain amount of time, you become a good critic. As you know, we have the left brain side. There are two ways how we learn. So the left side of our brain is more dominant in critical thinking.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, please, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the screen still shows Harry and it has changed just now.
Oh, okay. Did you see, I'm sorry, did you see this? Passive thinking?
No, ma'am.
The sponge and everything?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
can you see
Yes,
the
ma'am.
sponge
Visible.
screen? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
It is
ma'am.
visible now.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like me to repeat this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And this is the panning of bold, like I was telling you just now, which is related to active thinking. Right? So now we know that there are two types of thinking. One is passive thinking, and the other one is active thinking. Now, how do we see our brain? Most of the time, you will see that the people who think critically, their left brain side is more dominant. The left brain side focuses more on logic, sequence, rationality, analysis, objectives, and it demands a lot of reasons and data. However, the right side of our brain is more of creative nature. So all the qualities like being artistic, visualizing, your intuition, your imagination, your feelings, they all come from the right brain side. So a person who thinks critically uses his left brain side the most. Also, if you remember, or if you have learned in your past, the Bloom's taxonomy. Have you learned Bloom's taxonomy in your lessons ever? No? Okay, so the Bloom's taxonomy is like a pyramid.
No, ma'am.
Okay. The Bloom's taxonomy is like it's in the shape of a pyramid which has levels of learning. How do you progress from the lowest level to the highest level? The lowest level consists of three things. The first one is remembering, understanding, and applying. This is called the lower order thinking. However, and this is applicable for passive thinkers. The students who go to school, when they are taught a thing by their teacher, they take it religiously and then they try to memorize it, rote it, learn it, and then they will believe it for whole life. And that is how they think, because there's a set process, a guidance given, and they will go through that path always. They do not anything extra to explore and find anything from their own end. However, when your thinking order gets higher, then it comes to the first step of high order thinking, which is analyzing. And then you start evaluating, and after that you start creating, being creative. So being engineering students, you have to achieve the higher level by always practicing how to think critically. Now, what is critical thinking? Critical thinking, before we go to critical thinking, here's a very interesting slide with a few riddles, you can say, a few very logical questions. Let's see if you can think about the outcomes of these and answer. The first question is, how do you put a giraffe into a refrigerator? Now, don't ask me if this refrigerator is very big or small, or is the giraffe a cake or what. I don't know that. Just focus on the question, how do you put a giraffe into a refrigerator? How will you do that?
Open the door, put the giraffe inside the fridge, and close the door.
Absolutely. Did you Google it, or did
No,
you?
ma'am. I read it somewhere in Google, in the internet.
Okay, wonderful. So what do you learn from it? I mean, if you're able to answer this question, how do you analyze your thought?
Every hard questions could be easily answered, and we think too much about the question, something like that.
Yes, absolutely correct. So sometimes this is a very simple question, and many of the students, they would keep thinking. I have seen other batches as well. So they take a very long time to answer, or maybe they do not answer, they are not able to answer at all. That's because sometimes we tend to take simple things and we treat them in a very over complicated manner. The next question is, how do you put an elephant into a refrigerator? If you know this question, I'm sure you know the rest as well. So
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do you put an elephant into a refrigerator?
We open the door, put out the elephant, put the giraffe inside, and then close the doors.
Absolutely. And what does that test? What is your thought about it? I mean,
Both the questions are connected.
they are connected, right? And it also shows that if you're not able to answer the first one, it's actually the repercussions of your actions, and you learn from those. The third question is, a lion is hosting an animal conference, all the animals attend except one. Which animal doesn't attend?
Which one? The animal inside the fridge.
Which is the
Elephant.
elephant. That's right. So what does that prove? If you are able to answer this question, what does that prove?
The breathing
Questions are in sequence.
It proves that you have good memory. Now the fourth question is, there is a river you must cross, but it is used by crocodiles and you do not have a boat. How do you manage it?
We swim
I can go
through
because
it.
they are
Crocodiles are in birthday party of the lion.
Absolutely. And this shows that how quickly you learn from your mistakes and you can move forward, right? This is what is actually expected from future leaders like you. Now, what is critical thinking? Let's go deeper. What is critical thinking? I want someone to please read this slide for me.
Ma'am, actually, passive thinking, the slide
Yes,
we are seeing passive thinking slide.
You are on the passive thinking page right
Now, are you
Still we are on passive thinking page.
why is this happening? I really
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
know.
Now it is visual.
Okay. Can somebody read this out for me? What is critical thinking?
yeah.
Yes, please.
So the question is, what is critical thinking? To answer that, it is written critical thinking is general term given to wide range of cognitive and intellectual skills needed to first is effectively identify, analyze, and evaluate arguments. Second is discover and overcome personal prejudices and biases. Third is formulate and present convincing reasons in support of conclusions. And fourth is make responsible decisions about what to believe and do, about what to believe and what to do. The note says critical thinking is a skill so fortunately for us, we can enhance it through practice.
Right, thank you so much. So, critical thinking is something when you think, when you're able to think beyond what is obvious, right? When you're able to think what we all think, generally people think, when you're able to think beyond that, that is when you are critically thinking. So, critically thinking is a systematic process of evaluating a particular problem or an idea or a thought which does not necessarily be yours, of others. So you must have seen these critics who speak about, when you see a new movie, there are people who give reviews and there are critics who speak about that movie very fluently, and they give you various reasons why the movie did well and why did it not. You should see how minutely they watch this movie, and there are things that they would speak which actually doesn't come to our mind because we are watching the movie just for entertainment, but somebody is watching it very, very thoroughly, and then he can point out the mistakes, where all did this movie went wrong and how could that it have been improved. So critical thinking involves asking questions and then also forming opinion. Not only forming opinion, when you're forming an opinion, you also try to find out the source or the resource from where these opinions are coming. Are they credible or not? I'll give you a quick example. I'm moving on to the next slide. Can you see a new slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can please somebody
Yes, ma'am.
read this out to me?
Ma'am, could you please enlarge the slides?
Sure.
It is barely visible.
Is it fine?
Nothing happened.
The same.
I wonder what is this, why is this happening today? Yesterday's class also I did like this, but there was no problem as such. I'll just stop sharing and share it again. Just wait. Does it make any change now?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll read this out. You can just watch the figures, and if you can listen to me attentively, maybe you can come to a conclusion. Hope you can relate with this sequence. So here is a picture of a lady who is reading a book, and this is her observation in the first picture. She finds out that this book says only 55% of households in the UK have internet access. That figure seems very low. She says to herself, I wonder why. So she reads the book, she finds some information, but she is not believing it as such right now. Okay, she's not readily believing into it. She demands some more research. I'd better check with National Statistics. They are a government organization, so they should have very reliable data. Aha, they say that more than 70% of households in the UK have internet access. That seems more likely. I wonder why the book is wrong. And then she finds out, wait a minute, when was the book written? Let me see, 2005. That's 5 years ago. No wonder the statistics are out of date. So if you can see, she is a critical thinker. She's bought a book, she read the information, and she's not relying, she's not believing on that readily. She's trying to do her own research to find out from a trustable source, which is National Statistics. And then she does her own research, and then she comes to a conclusion that because the book was published 5 years ago, not that the data was wrong, but because it was published 5 years ago, the data was actually outdated. And that's a structured conclusion that she comes to. Why did this happen? Because she thought in sequence, she thought it constructively, she followed a method, and that is why she was able to come to a good conclusion. So to become a good critic, you all who you are going to be one day good critics, to be a good critic you have to actually qualify, you actually have to qualify as a critic, and you become that only when you are able to follow a few standards. Are you able to see the critical thinking standard slide?
Yes, ma'am.
If the letters are visible, can any one of you read the standards for me, please?
Yes, ma'am. Clearly. Yes, ma'am. Critical thinking standards. Universal intellectual standards are standards which must be applied to thinking. To think critically requires having command of this standard. First one is clarity, then accuracy, precision, relevance, depth, breadth, logic, and fairness.
Thank you so much. So these are a few standards. If you qualify and master all of these standards, then you become a good critic. Let's go to these standards one by one and try to understand that one by one. First, let's see clarity and accuracy. Again, somebody can read this?
May I?
Yes, please.
Clarity and accuracy. An information requires elaboration and illustration. Second, an unclear statement does not help determine if it is reliable and relevant. For example, how can we improve the Indian education system?
So clarity and accuracy is obtained only if you can elaborate on a particular statement or an information that you have. Can you illustrate it? An unclear statement, like it says, it does not help you in coming into a conclusion, and it is never reliable and relevant. The example given here is a question